Joining us tonight, the president of the Foundation of Defensive Democracies, Clifford May. Great to have you with us. Let's start with first, before we turn to the nuclear arms talks, weapons talks, however you would style them. These ships, after having the Iranian Navy was chased away by the U.S. Navy and the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Group, and now here come two Iranian destroyers. Their intent, and what do you make of it?
Yes, and it's very important to understand the strategic intent, because what the Iranians have in mind is taking control of the two most strategic waterways in the world, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. This is where the oil flows that goes to Europe. Europe is totally dependent upon them. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is one water that Iran already claims as its territorial waters. And the U.S. says, no, these are international waters. The other strait that you mentioned, the Bab el-Mandab, that also is strategic, and Iran wants to control that through Yemen. So they want to control this strategic area, they want to control the flow of oil, and they're also putting a pincer movement on Saudi Arabia. If they control Yemen to the south, if they control Iraq to the north, if they control parts of Syria and certainly Lebanon, they'll have control. And that's why Iran, particularly with nuclear weapons, will be such a threat, because do you think we will challenge their control of these waterways if they have nuclear weapons and threaten to use them? And that's why also an Iran with nuclear weapons will be an existential threat to Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries, as well as to Israel, as well as the most important strategic threat to the United States.
Iran making very bellicose remarks, taking bellicose actions towards Saudi Arabia as it continues, along with the coalition of Arab states, its attacks on targets in Yemen. This is becoming something far more serious, I believe, than this president ever anticipated. He looks again as if he has caught the tail of events and is being dragged along by them. This is doubly troubling because Russia is an ally of Iran, one of its sponsors, supporters, as well as allies. And now in joint exercises that are increasing in frequency and dimension with China. Is President Obama, is the United States, is NATO being played for fools here by the capitals of Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran?
I think that those capitals all perceive weakness on the part of the U.S. They perceive America under President Obama withdrawing. And as that happens, they intend to establish their own hegemony, their own empires. So Iran intends to be the colossus, the hegemon, the boss of the Middle East. That's why it wants to control those two very strategic waterways. Vladimir Putin, of course, is reconstituting a Russian empire in Crimea, of course, in Ukraine. That may not be the end of it. He may have other ambitions. And China, of course, wants to establish its hegemony in Asia as much as it can. And it's working towards those aims, all because it sees the U.S. withdrawing. Now, that's not as bad as it gets. I think it gets a lot worse if we continue to withdraw and if our weakness is perceived. The problem, Lou, is if the U.S. doesn't lead in the world, these other actors will rule, and that's what they're saying they're going to do, and they're saying America is not going to stop them.
Very quickly, we're over time, if I may, Clifford May. The nuclear talks, how do you think they end?
Badly. I think they end with an agreement because President Obama wants an agreement and feels that a bad agreement is better than no agreement. And I think he means to go around Congress and make it binding on the U.S. by going to the United Nations and having international law bind us without the assent or the consent of Congress and the U.S. public. That's a very bad precedent.
Would that be enough to create a rebellion on Capitol Hill? Would it be enough for courts to intercede? Would that not be a breaking point in our democratic constitutional republic?
You might like to think so, but I'm not sure at all it will. He has found a workaround. In other words, he's saying this is an executive order, therefore it doesn't have to be considered a treaty, therefore I don't need congressional consent. But once I go to the UN, the Security Council will make it binding on UN members, and you'll have France and Germany and others saying it is binding on the U.S. The U.S. better not violate this agreement. It's a very bad situation.
If our audience is not deeply troubled by what they have heard you say tonight, they just haven't been paying attention. Clifford May, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lou.